All right, good morning. Welcome everyone to the live room, our weekly live room at binary.com. We're going to take a look at the charts and what they have to say in just a second. But first of all, this is hosted by binary.com, of course, and my name is Chris. And we have to explain that trading any financial markets, also Forex or any other financial products, is considered high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Please seek the advice of an independent financial advisor for more information on that. And this webinar is for educational purposes only. So thank you for your attention on that. In case you don't know, you can watch this live, of course, as you are doing now, or if you register at blog.binary.com/weekly trading room, and with your name and email address, you can get an email when the recording is ready, and you can view it anytime at your convenience. With that said, let's take a look at the euro dollar, pound dollar, dollar yen, AUD USD, and the XAU USD today, and what could we expect for this week. Alrighty. Good. With that said, let me head over to the calendar. And then we'll take a look at the charts. So today we have pending home sales on the USD and a few lighter and medium light news. Otherwise, this week we have some dollar red tagged events, pound as well, unemployment rates on the US on Wednesday, and then Thursday we have Bank of England speaking, governor speaking, but also a public holiday in the US, Thanksgiving, and that's about it for that week. All right, so Thursday and Friday could be lower volatility, slower movements, in fact, than usual. So we have to be aware of that. Alrighty, let's move over to the charts and take a look at what we can expect this week. So first of all, let's take a look at the euro dollar from a long-term perspective, and I'll just take everything off so we can start from scratch. Good. Last week we had actually a bullish weekly candle. We have a wick at the bottom, we have a bullish close, and that was a bit expected last week, right, when we said it could retrace halfway and make a bullish candle. That has happened, but if you look at it from a daily perspective, we have to also realize that this downside here, the latest downside that we had on the euro dollar, is quite impulsive, it's quite bearish. It had 5 waves in it as well, for those of you who like edited waves, meaning that any upside should be a retrace. And if we put a Fibonacci retracement level on this downside, then we can see that it stopped at the 50 fib and that price moved down with engulfing daily candles at the 50 fib. Now we've had some upside after that, but we haven't broken this top. So the likelihood of this acting as a resistance to get some more downside is definitely decent. Of course, we never know. This could be actually a retracement for more upside, but then even then the 61.8 and the 786 should be retracements for more downside. So overall, I think it looks pretty bearish. Then again, it depends from which level. It could be even this level. If it does push up, then it might be the next fib, or this fib. One way of getting a confirmation, of course, is waiting for a trend line to break, for example, like this one. Once this trend line breaks, there is that decent probability to move to these targets mentioned on the chart at 131.50, then 129.50, and then 127.60. So this is what I'm expecting, and the break of that red line will be the confirmation of the euro dollar downside. For our chart, you can see that the upside was very slow and tedious and corrective, and we actually had a break of that, of course, last week. Basically, a good break of that trend line. The upside was very corrective, as I said. Looks like a bear flag, and now we're getting a very deep pullback and slowly moving to the downside. So personally, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a break, pullback, and we're going now down to continue for that downside momentum. That's what I'm expecting. Let's see if that indeed pans out. And there's the 1 hour chart. Alrighty. So that's the euro dollar. Basically, from the long-term perspective, what could we expect if this does move down from any of these fibs? As I said, we could expect it to go down to these targets, but in the bigger picture, let me go to the weekly chart. In the bigger picture, that downside would be something like this, and we would probably be testing these bottoms again. Now, if we break those bottoms or not will depend, of course, if we have another downside trade and back to this bottom at 120.50, I think, and maybe then even lower. Any bounce, of course, off that 127.50 could be a total retracement back up, maybe to test these tops again. So that's how it fits in the bigger picture. Let's take a look at the pound now, and I will zoom out again, all the way to the weekly chart. And the pound is actually stubbornly staying pretty high. We have a resistance line right in here. We have resistance right in here. Let me make that red, in fact, so that I don't cause any confusion. Like this. Of course, we have a resistance right in here as well. So we're close to long-term resistance levels, that's for sure. And if we then zoom in, despite the weekly up candle, you can see that the price is very close to those resistances. So there's a lot of probability that some bearishness could kick in here. Then again, of course, we have to also look at the fact that this could be maybe a small bull flag, looking like this perspective, which could mean, for example, up, correction, and break. So that would be the alternative scenario if the currency does break to the upside. At the moment, though, I wouldn't necessarily assume that it will break to the upside. It is a resistance spot, and the likelihood of the resistance acting as a catalyst for downside is definitely a decent probability. All right. If it does break above 162.60, this top here, we have the green circle, and then later on 163.30 above these tops, then we would have the bullish breakout trade to at least 167.50, I would say, is my judgment. If we do respect these huge weekly tops here, then we could expect some downside maybe. At first, we could expect some downside maybe to test this bottom, then later on maybe these bottoms. If we break those levels, then we can expect maybe a bigger fall. Who knows, maybe even to test these bottom here at 148, 30, 50. All right. So also the pound dollar at a very decisive talking spot, the decision point, bounce or break spot, right? Is it going to break to the upside or bounce to the downside? So the same as the euro, the pound has the same. Dollar yen is a bit different. Dollar yen is in fact breaking to the upside. Here we're talking about a potential breakout continuation trade. It has broken out. Of course, there's always a decent probability that it will continue to break out. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. Zoomed in. You can see we've had a couple of bullish weekly candles already in a row. This is last week was the fourth in a row, in fact, and slowly but surely building at the upside. Took some time to turn, but I've been talking about the potential bullishness on the dollar yen for a while. That had, of course, to do with the fact that we had a tremendous impulse here, a huge uptrend, and we also broke above this triangle, like this. All right, so this was a corrective triangle, and we're breaking that to the upside, indicating that we could be continuing with this impulse and uptrend. And if we do, then we could have large targets to the upside. We could be looking at 110, 120, 125. That's how far this currency could move to. Because if we put a fib on this upside like this, you can see we stopped at the 38.2% Fibonacci retracement. And you can see minus 272 is at 110, minus 618 is 120, and 125 is a monthly resistance spot. So that's possible. Now, of course, there's one major resistance still in the way, this 103.70, which is the top where I have the green line. That is still a potential resistance, obviously. But definitely looking like a bullish break so far. If we push above 103.70, we should see, I would expect, the continuation up to those targets as mentioned before. So looking very nice. Daily chart, you can see we had a slow start, but as usual, deep retracements, and then slowly but surely getting more impulsive to the upside as the currency breaks higher and higher. This is the 4-hour chart. And in this type of environment, we should notice that breakout trades are becoming more and more shallower. You can see every time we break these green lines, the first times we had pretty deep retracements where I have the green circles, but now we're getting shallower retracements before moving up. And here we had actually a very shallow retracement. So at the moment, I wouldn't necessarily say it has to continue in one shot. Of course, I would expect eventually a pullback to this level before moving up again. That's what I'm waiting for, to get a pullback to this level and then take it up again. And we should see, is my expectation, a decent chance of breakouts, pullback, breakouts, breakouts, shallow pullbacks like retracements. For example, bull flags, breakouts, bull flags, breakouts. That's what I would expect up to that 103.70. Then we'll have to see if we can break above 103.70. If we do, then we should see the continuation of that on the dollar yen. So, very interesting. AUD USD. Let's take a look. Let me take off everything again. And we'll go and start with that weekly chart as with the others. So we had a couple of weeks downside since this bearish wick here. We've had 2 weekly downsides, a doji, and then again a bearish candle. We've pushed through this weekly support as expected and as also announced last week as a potential support and a confirmation of downside. We've pushed through that, and indeed we're moving down. So weekly bearishness here on the AUD USD, and it has everything to do with the fact that this, of course, could be a retracement for more downside. We've had a pretty bearish impulse here, of course. Move up to the 50 fib. Could be down to the minus 272 target at 83.85. So let's take a look at the daily. It's the 4 hours, sorry. Daily chart looking very nicely to the downside, moving in lower lows, lower highs, in a very nice downside. 4 hour chart, same thing, and moving very aggressively to the downside. No divergence, so I think that any correction here would mean continuation. At the moment, of course, we've already moved down a lot, quite a lot, so I would be cautious here because this currency has already fallen quite substantially. But if we get any bear flag or a decent correction, then we should see a continuation to the downside. One thing eventually to look for is this oscillator returning back to the zero line, and then we should see one more break of the bottom. Wherever this stops, the oscillator will then go back to the zero line, and the next break is a good one because we should see at least a minimum divergence on this 4 hour chart, what I would think, before any potential serious upside retracement, in my opinion. 1 hour chart, here too, almost back to the zero line. That would be a good opportunity probably to take it back down again and capitalize on the potential bearishness of this AUD USD. All right, but still waiting for that retracement back to the zero line because that hasn't happened yet, and we've overextended or extended quite far. I'm not sure if it's overextended necessarily, but probably the downside potential is there, but maybe not right now. I would wait for a retracement first. Alrighty, that leaves gold. Basically had some downside here. Let's see. The weekly chart's difficult to read, but it's at 1230. That means we're below the 1250 support, and with the fact that we're below 1250 support, actually could mean that we're breaking this triangle on the XAU-USD to the downside. All right, so in that regard, we had, of course, a massive downtrend on XAU-USD, then saw this upside correction, and the question was that just a part of the upside correction, or we would see more? Now that we've broken this triangle to the downside, that upside seems less likely, and in fact, there's a decent chance of downtrend correction and downtrend continuation Of course, that's a bit early to tell still. I would like to see 1180, this bottom being broken before we have that confirmation, but at least some downside to challenge that bottom seems likely. Once we break the 1180 bottom, then we might see this fall a bit further, maybe even to 1100, maybe 2000, before we could expect some bullish bounce yet again. All right, so that's the major question. Will 1180 break, or are we just going to potentially fall a bit and then bounce off that level? So that wraps up the session for today. Are there any questions maybe that you might have? In the meantime, I am going to thank you for being here and apologize for starting 2 minutes late. Thank you for your understanding on that. Here's that link once again, blog.binary.com/weekly trading room, where you can register yourself and you'll get an email when the recording is ready, just in case you can't make the live session. All right, that wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this 25th of November. We'll be back next week, Monday at 8 a.m. GMT on the 2nd of December. And in fact, we'll be taking a look at how November has closed. And we'll be also reviewing what we can expect in December, the last month of this trading year. So that's all coming next week. Looking forward to that. In the meantime, wish you great trading and talk to you soon. Cheers.